All right, everyone. I don't know about you, but that was a pretty cool run. At least I thought so. There were some really cool maneuvers, and the bosses were so pretty, especially once they were like purified and fixed. I really like the deer one. um, but yeah, that was a great run. And I don't think we actually got a shout out for Sable, but we'll get that taken care of before too long here. And coming up next, we've got Ben 10 Power Trip. We're gonna do all the bosses, and this game surprised us when it was submitted. We were looking at it, and we thought it looked pretty cool, actually. So I hope you guys are gonna stick around, get comfy, maybe grab a snack, get some water, because I think it's gonna be a pretty cool run. Real quick, while we're between things and waiting, we've got a few incentives to meet still. We have Castlevania Legends dramatic dialogue reading. We need just $7 more for that. For Super Smash Bros. 64, all bonus stages tonight. We still need a decent chunk, being $193, but we have several hours to get there, so I have the utmost confidence we'll get it. And for tomorrow, for Yoshi's Woolly World, we have Make CJ be PG, make him watch his mouth just a bit. If those incentives aren't enough for you, we've got a few bid wars going on also. We have what to name the Flamigo in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet run tonight. Right now, Crunchy Brown is the name winning, but there are some other nice things, such as My Name Jeff, Oedipus. Oh my gosh, that's not how you say that. Oedipus, sorry. Neil Gaiman, and Snorlax Dumper. Snorlax Dumper is actually in second place if you want it to be real funny. But there's also which is the worst vegetable between green beans, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, lettuce, and spinach. CJ said that he's going to do a $10 swear jar if the PG CJ incentive gets met. So that's even more money for every time CJ breaks it, which is pretty darn cool. I talked about what $10 could do for kiddos earlier, but we're just $3 away from 2,000. Oh no, we're not 3, we're 53. I can math. We're $53 away from $2,500. And 1,000, so like less than half of what we've raised already, can provide a tanker truck of clean water for a village through a whole drought, which I think is really cool. Like, water is very expensive and hard to move, so the fact that we effectively can help 2 villages through a drought and then some with the money we've raised so far is absolutely wild. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for all of your contributions and hard work. And even if you can't donate right now, just being here, hanging out, supporting the stream, getting your friends in here when you can, we appreciate that too. Every little bit you give for supporting the channel, whether it's a subscription or hanging out through the ad breaks or whatever else, that helps us upgrade our stuff so we can make an even better show and raise even more money for Save the Children. So thank you all so much for being here and hanging out. And it's underrated how much it means to the runners too, to have the support of their community and their friends in chat, hanging out, telling their fun inside stories, and just hyping everyone up for their game. That's such a big deal, and we couldn't do this without everyone, so thank you. Sorry to get a little emotional there. It's a really big deal, and it's super helpful. CJ, am not a flatfoot, thank you. And I never said you couldn't go 3 hours without swearing, but I think it's a great incentive, and if you break it, it's extra money. So, really, there's no losing here. Well, unless your name is CJ, I guess. But you know what? I actually heard that we're ready to go whenever, so don't go too far. We're gonna have a quick break, and then it'll be time to go.
Eat at Jack in the Box. 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 Twitch.tv/popcornparfait. 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 Twitch.tv/popcornparfait.
All right, everyone, we're here. We're ready for some Ben 10 Power Trip, and I'm just gonna pass it on over to Lily. Take us away.
All right, thank you. Everybody, welcome to Ben 10 Power Trip. This is a open world 3D platformer game, and the reason I'm introducing it before we start is because we're going to start off with a big glitch, so I want to have time to explain that. And I'll just count us down. We'll go in 3, 2, and 1. So, starting off the game here, skip the first cutscene, immediately quit out, and what we're doing here is the setup for the All Aliens glitch. In Ben 10 Power Trip, there's 6 aliens, despite the name Ben 10.
We just good. Sure.
And by doing this glitch right at the start, it just unlocks all of them for us. And it sounds like it would be really game-breaking. Unfortunately for us, as soon as we talk to Ranger Ryan over here, we're gonna lose we're gonna lose all of those alien unlocks that we had. But it does allow us to do a skip right here at the start. Jump over that fence and it skips a cutscene. So a little bit faster. But unfortunately not the game-breaking glitch that all alien unlocks would imply. So throughout the course of the game, we're going to unlock the different aliens and then fight bosses in various areas. Right now we're in the tutorial, and the first alien we're going to unlock is Heat Blast. Each alien has a level which basically introduces you to their mechanics and stuff. Heat Blast is the only one that we're going to do mostly vanilla. There's a couple skips here and there, but unfortunately for us, the teleporter at the end of the level doesn't unlock until we set fire to all these torches, so gotta do that first. All of the other ones have huge skips where we basically just jump around the door instead of going through it. But for this one, we gotta do it mostly legit. And this tutorial has been a big roadblock for us because it's actually possible to get out of bounds from the death plane which surrounds the tutorial and then go to the rest of the game, but none of the NPCs will talk to us until we've finished the main quest in the tutorial. So it's been a bit of a roadblock for us, and unfortunately, if we were able to just skip the tutorial, we would be able to keep the aliens unlocked the whole game, because they don't get taken away until we start the tutorial. So it's been a bit of a problem for us. I'm going to talk about Ben a bit. Ben doesn't have much to him. He can't attack. He's got a sort of normal jump height, but what he does have is his scooter. He's a little scooter commuter is what he says in the game. And there's a couple interesting mechanics to the way that the scooter works. The intention is that when you go downhill, you speed up. When you go uphill, you slow down. But the way it ends up working is that anytime we go down by any amount, we just get a massive speed boost. So if we fall off of anything while we're on our scooter, we'll get a bit of a speed boost, and you'll see me use that throughout the run whenever I'm playing as Ben to go a little bit faster. I'll sort of intentionally land on things just so that we can get a quick little speed boost. But we don't use Ben a lot because in general it's better to use one of the aliens that will unlock later, Accelerate. Accelerate has a really high run speed, which is really nice for an open world game like this. We can cover the whole map in not a lot of time. As for combat, you've got light attacks, heavy attacks. For most of the combat, we're just going to use one single combo. It depends on the alien which combo we use. For Heat Blast, the best one is the triple light into heavy combo. But yeah, we're coming up on the end of the tutorial here. The last thing we have to do is one of these sort of extra missions. It's part of the tutorial, but we never need to do another one of these in the all bosses category. That is sort of resigned to 100%, which nobody runs because it's far too long. Normally when you touch those pink tiles, it sends you back to the beginning of the level, but if you just mash the jump button, and it's not frame perfect or anything, if you just mash the jump button, it doesn't affect you. And it has to do with the landing animation. You can jump during it, but you can't be sort of teleported back during it, which is nice.
Time to scoot.
And then over here, we're going to quit out of the game to disable the quest that we're about to get given. And then we're going to do a pretty tricky jump to get out of bounds of this tutorial area. There's a big death plane that surrounds it, and we need to basically get a speed boost with the scooter off of a rock, and then that'll give us barely enough distance to make it over the death plane. It's actually a miracle that it works. So that's this here. And we're actually going to play the entire game out of bounds of this tutorial area. And there's a huge portion of the map that just so happens to not be useful to us, where if you go too close to it, you will hit that death plane. So it's really lucky that we're able to complete the whole game while avoiding beating the tutorial. There's a lot of tiny coincidences that built up to this really big glitch. And it is really big because even though it doesn't take long to beat the tutorial after the point where we left off there is a lengthy cutscene afterwards, because technically the game hasn't like started yet. If you end the tutorial properly, there's a title card that sort of, you know, begins the game, but we don't have time. We don't have time for that. There's 3 areas we're going to go to. In each, there's 1 boss and 2 aliens. This is the city area. We're going to unlock Accelerate and Shock Rock. And the bosses aren't really important. You'd expect them to be like iconic parts of Ben 10 history. They're just random guys. So we're going to invade this factory where some suspicious handlings are going on, and we're going to write a news article about it, because the whole sort of theme of the city area is that we got to get the people's attention to warn them about the danger that's coming, which is of course the main villain, Hex the Magician. I haven't actually watched Ben 10, so I don't know much more than that for the plot of this game, but I do know that this quest for fame takes us to some pretty wacky places. So starting off with the factory here, we've got our first and only wall clip in the whole game. Since it's an open world game, clips out of bounds are not that useful, but surprisingly common. But this is the one spot where we're put in a confined space, and by clipping out of bounds here we can go straight to the end of the factory and then basically do it backwards. We've got to press 2 buttons to activate a portal where we'll unlock our next alien, and usually that would involve a lot of stuff like puzzles and moving platforms, but since we do it backwards, we can just go ahead and press them, no questions asked. Coming up here, we're going to unlock Accelerate. This is the alien that we're going to spend 90% of the run playing as, because Accelerate's just like tailor-made for speedrunning. Not only is he by far the fastest in run speed, but his combat abilities are really good. He has a combo that is a area of effect damage. He has a combo that allows him to move around while he attacks, so you can hit multiple enemies. And he has the ability to one-shot enemies just by running into them, which sounds like it would be really broken, and it kind of is, because we use it a lot. But it's also pretty tricky because the handling on Accelerate's running speed is really bad, so it's hard to, you know, be precise when you're running into different enemies and stuff. So like I said, we're just gonna skip all of this. Normally we would grind rail there. We can jump over a lot of it. And then next we have kind of a funny part of the run. This game came out in 2020 and it didn't receive a lot of developer support. It had 1 update after the game came out, and none of us know what it did because I wasn't playing the game at the time and I guess no one else was paying attention. What we do know is that that update accidentally patched in the All Aliens glitch, because if you play the 1.0 version, you can't do it. So that's interesting. But there was a patch recently that added a 13-second time save. There used to be a soft lock over here. There's a cutscene and a phone call. If you pressed the phone call right before the cutscene, it would soft lock the game. So they just removed both of them. No cutscene, no phone call, and that's an easy 13-second time save right there, just for free. And I still haven't set a new PB since that update came out, so it's just lying there on the workshop table waiting for me. One of the interesting bits about the combat there is we're still quite weak, so we can't kill the enemies in just one combo. So what I did there was I pushed them off the side of the building and they just instantly die. That doesn't come up anywhere else in the run, but it's a cool little thing I thought I'd mention. Right now we're trying to collect 3 symbols which act as a passcode for the enemy base. They're not random at all, so they're the same every time, but we still have to do this quest to get to the next place. we do have a new enemy coming up. You've seen the two normal enemies, the little guy and the slightly taller guy. They're kind of unremarkable. They're just the sort of Goombas of this game. But coming up next, we have the shield enemy, who, if you hit from the front, takes barely any damage, but if you hit from behind, takes a massive amount. So the way we would kind of approach that is by whacking him on his tummy so that he gets stunned, and then running behind him to one-shot him. And as you can see here, the one-shot ability of Accelerate can be very potent when you hit it, but if you miss, you're just wasting time. You haven't done any damage. When I first started playing this game, I was really scared to go for stuff like that because, like, while it does one shot, if you're not good at the game, you are just doing no damage. This game's actually based on the reboot of Ben 10, so it's not the Ben 10 from your childhood unless you're like 12, in which case, hi. But there are a lot of things in common. A lot of characters are exactly the same, and as far as the alien designs are concerned, they've not changed much. There are some new aliens, one of which we'll get to see later on in this run, but for the most part, they stuck to the classic aliens, and so you can almost just pretend that it is the classic Ben 10. So here we're putting in the passcode. While the passcode itself isn't random, it is random what symbol they start on, and then we have to go around in a cycle. That was actually pretty bad luck. I had to rotate them several times, but it doesn't really make a huge difference. This game's actually really light on RNG, which is great for us. There's only a couple examples of stuff like that, and whenever there is RNG, it only takes a couple seconds. So coming up next, we've got a chase sequence. We're supposed to chase the main villain. What we're actually going to do is run the complete opposite direction, because for some reason, if we do run the complete opposite direction, it's going to teleport us to the end of the chase sequence. This is the only chase sequence in the game that works like this. Every other one will teleport you to the start if you go outside the range of the chase, but this one is special, and it sends us right to the end of the chase sequence, which makes this lengthy, sort of 2-minute long chase sequence into a cool maybe 15 seconds, and that'll bring us over to our next alien, who is pretty cool. I want to talk a little bit about the category we're playing, which is all bosses. It used to be any percent that I submitted this run to the marathon for, but then a new glitch was discovered by a runner called Sluggard Shit, which cuts the any percent time down to about 16 minutes. It basically just skips to the last mission in the game. But it's funny you should ask if there are graphic options in this game, because there are graphic options, but in a recent patch they accidentally obscured them in the menu, so while you can still change them, you can't see what you're doing. But they're still in the menu, they're just kind of hidden. So this is Shockrock. He's a reboot alien, so you probably don't recognize him unless you're a huge Ben 10 fan. But he's a guy, he's made of electricity, and he has the ability to grapple onto these little light post things, which is pretty underwhelming when we only have Shockrock, but it's really powerful when combined with other aliens. Because what happens when you grapple onto something and then switch into another alien is it'll launch us really high in the air, and that can be used to scale all sorts of things, such as this huge tower that we need to somehow get out of. We're going to upgrade our damage. There are 3 kinds of upgrades in this game. Toughness, which upgrades your health, damage, which upgrades your damage, and luck, which upgrades your chance of getting a critical hit. In this run, we're only going to upgrade damage because none of the monsters do enough damage for us to worry about having too little health, and luck is just so unreliable that it's not worth upgrading. Now we have to meet with a group of some goth kids, and these goth kids have a band, and they want to get some radio play. Like I said, this quest for fame is going to take us to a lot of strange places, and we're going to get these we're going to get these 12-year-olds on the radio. We've got another new enemy coming up, and that'll be the last one for pretty much the rest of the run, outside of the bosses. These are the flying enemies.
Should I give him a head start?
The flying enemies are really irritating because you can't do combos while you're in the air. You can only do combos on the ground. So while they're in the air, it's really hard to take care of them. They do have a vulnerability period where they come closer to the ground and you're able to combo them. And also Shockrock's able to grapple them to the ground. So there are a couple ways to deal with them, but they can still be really irritating. The longer we go on in the run, the less important that becomes, because we'll eventually do so much damage with one attack that the flying enemies will just die. Alright, coming up now, we've got our first chase sequence. We're going to chase a comic delivery truck. I'm not sure why. Seems kind of disconnected from the rest of our journey, but like I said, we can't just run the opposite direction. But what we can do is beat the delivery truck to its destination. Usually, in a normal playthrough, you would chase after the truck, but what we can do is just run straight to the end, and as long as we're careful not to touch any of the triggers which teleport us back to the start, that works, and it'll trigger a cutscene which puts us on to the next part of the quest, which is another lucky example of a way we can skip these chase sequences. There are several of those in the run, and we're not going to do any of them the vanilla way. And as you can see here, I'm sort of dropping everything that I'm doing to hit these flying enemies once they land, because that is the fastest way to sort of deal with the combat, is to just look out for those. In this next segment, we're going to have the longest period of downtime in the whole run. It wouldn't be a licensed game without, these boring, completely unrelated to the rest of the gameplay segments. So what we've got coming up next is a newspaper delivery segment. We're going to deliver 40 newspapers to people throughout the town. So, Kitsune, if you have anything you want to say or read, this would be the perfect time to do it. You've got about 2 minutes to fill.
Yeah, so we did get one donation so far. It was for $20 from Big Lily Fan. There's no comment or anything, but still, thank you so much. We appreciate you tons, whoever you are.
Thank you, Big Lily Fan. That's gotta be Ellie, if I had to guess. So yeah, during this newspaper delivery section, we're basically just running point to point, but we're also being careful to collect all the coins we come across, because later on in the run we're going to have to buy some upgrades, so it's good to look out for. Unfortunately, it doesn't show off the best of this game's movement, because we are just mostly running in a straight line for the whole time. But we're about halfway done here. If you have anything else to read or say about incentives or anything.
Well, I have an update that Big Lily Fan's donation put asparagus in the lead for the worst vegetable.
Ooh. Got an asparagus hater in the chat.
Me too, Big Lily Fan, me too.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to rank highly on worst vegetable, right? Alright, this is us at the end of our side quest, delivering newspapers. We have another chase segment. It's actually a follow segment. This one says follow, not chase. But we can also just turn around and go to the end. We've got to be careful here. If we fall too far down to the ground, then we're going to be teleported back to the start, which also incurs a lengthy cutscene. But as long as we land on that building, we'll be fine. And now we have the first boss of the game. This'll end the city section. We're lucky to have Accelerate for this one because his high damage running ability comes in handy. The way these bosses work is there are enemies which defend these crystals, and after you beat all 3 of the crystals, you get to fight the boss one-on-one. These are
Monsters nearby.
not too dangerous. I've never died during any of these segments. The bosses are kind of a pushover. I'm not even really sure what this one's supposed to be. It's some kind of city architecture with a big button on its head. The boss in the forest area is like a tree, so that makes sense.
Guess they couldn't keep up.
And here we go. We're gonna try to one-shot the boss here. It's not too difficult, but it has given me some trouble before.
My shadow now.
Monsters. Should I give them a head start?
And there we go. That's the first boss. We won't be so lucky for the next one. All of these bosses are going to restrict our alien choices down to just a couple. So
This'll come in.
we're not going to have Accelerate for the next 2 bosses, unfortunately. So up next we have the sort of swamp/town segment. We're not going to unlock 2 aliens here because technically Heat Blast is one of the 2 aliens for this area, which we already unlocked during the tutorial. But here we go to the swamp, and we're going to start a quest where we basically just help out around the town. We're gonna be sort of the handyman around the town, and that's kind of the theme for this whole area. Is we're gonna do a bunch of things completely unrelated to our main quest, and somehow it all ties in through pure coincidence. We're gonna buy a few power upgrades. They're just going to give us a temporary upgrade to our damage, which we can use during boss fights and such. I've been careful to get at least 450 coins, because that's how much it costs to buy 3 of them, and we have 3 bosses left. That's the final boss, and then the 2 area bosses.
What happened? Leave it.
There's a neat little movement segment where we burn some piles of leaves. This is using the other of Heat Blast's 2 abilities, where he can double jump. He can also set stuff on fire, and we use Accelerate in between to tie that all together. Then we're going to fetch some electrical transformers from the mountain. This is another combat heavy section. We're basically going to fight monsters, and much like the crystals, after we defeat the monsters we're going to have access to these electrical transformers. So during this little bit of... I've just fallen off of this walkway twice now. During this little bit of downtime I want to talk a little bit about the new any % run, because I do think it's cool. The NPC that gives us the last quest just so happens to be our cousin Gwen, and our cousin Gwen also just so happens to be standing next to us at the start of the game, and there just so happens to be a second in between the start of the game and the first cutscene where you can move around, and if you talk to Gwen during that 1 second period, which can actually be quite difficult because you just gotta mash the talk button and pray, then we can just start the final quest. The problem with this, of course, is that we don't get any upgrades or anything, so it's not that similar to this run, because even though we're just playing the last half of this run basically, we're doing it with no upgrades, so we've got to be very careful. All the fights take a lot longer, and it's generally just the worst of the two main categories. And yeah, we got Errol Electric here. If you pay attention, you'll notice that a lot of the characters in this game have pun names. So if you like puns, this is a good game for you. We're going to talk to a witch doctor later called Amphibian. And then we're going to collect some frogs. So right now, we've got a catastrophe on our hands, or at least the village does. We've got some lumberjacks without beards. And can you really be a proper lumberjack with no facial hair? So what we've got to do is create a potion to get these lumberjacks their beards back. And so this is actually a really cool segment in my opinion. We're basically going to collect 3 different types of ingredients from all over the swamp. But these ingredients can move around, and we've got to react to that to do it as fast as possible. This is the other bit of RNG in the game, where they can basically move in any of the 360 directions available to them, which can make or break runs. I've had, minus 30-second gold splits, and I've had plus 20 seconds red splits. It can really be a major choke point for the run there. So we've got to collect these crafty cattails, which unfortunately are kind of impossible to collect before they dip down into the water, so we just have to wait for them and then react to when they pop up. Can be kind of tricky, but we're alright. Toxic truffles and magic mushrooms are mystic mushrooms. Not magic mushrooms, that's a different kind. They can just jump in various directions. The damage that the toxic truffles does to us are completely, negligible, so we don't really worry about that. And now we've got our potion. And what did I say about licensed games earlier? Segments completely unrelated to the main gameplay. Well, I've got a little mini game for you. We're gonna put some beards on some lumberjacks. Check this out. Drop on the potion, and they can grow some pretty cool beards. Unfortunately for us, we don't have time to give them a full beard. We gotta move on as soon as possible. So they're gonna have to deal with these sort of scraggly, incomplete beards, but that'll give them a fraction of their lumberjacking power back. And now we unlock Forearms. Forearms is a classic Ben 10 alien. He's a big guy with 4 arms. They were really creative when designing him. And he seems kind of innocuous on his own. He doesn't have any movement abilities or anything like that, but he is the secret to one of the biggest glitches we have in this run. Unfortunately, you won't get to see that for a while, but it's something to look forward to. And again, we have a little bit of downtime while I do this combat section, so if you have anything to say or read, go ahead.
Alright, well, there have not been any new donations, but there was a question on why we're doing a veggie poll in the first place. And so we were talking the other day in the Discord about what the worst vegetable was. And we had some, green beans, lettuce. Someone said, carrots were the worst. Someone said broccoli was the worst. But it turned into this, pseudo-aggression where everyone was like, you must not eat any vegetables. How are you alive? And I'm concerned for your stomach. And 3 days later, we were all still arguing about which vegetable was really the worst and how could you pick this? This is so inoffensive. Come on. Or I literally spit this out when I eat it. What do you mean it's not offensive? So we decided it was the perfect candidate because after 3 days, we were still talking about it.
So now you can literally put your money where your mouth is.
Literally, yes.
Alright, so we're just in the forearms level here. It's pretty innocuous. We're just gonna jump over a bunch of things. But I do want to highlight one of the cool parts of the run, which is just the sheer variety of tricks we have. Over here, we're gonna skip a segment by jumping off the head of an enemy, and that can be really prominent in some other games, but in this game we only need it once, but it's right there on the alien who has the worst movement options, so just interesting how it all works out. Up next, we're going to the Lumberjack Village. They live in the mountains and they cut down wood. We're going to become the the king of the Lumberjacks, actually, because Forearms has all the talents a Lumberjack needs, which is the ability to move wood, cut down trees. There you go. So we're gonna climb this mountain. Usually you would have to go all through caves and stuff and solve various puzzles involving moving rocks. We don't really need to do that because Heat Blast has a little trick up his sleeve. I mentioned earlier that he has double jumps, but what about triple jumps and quadruple jumps? Well, those are possible too. Whenever we jump onto a slope with Heat Blast, it refreshes his double jump ability. So, you know, this mountain's covered in slopes, and the way we have to do this is a little bit precise, because while we're on a slope, we can't double jump.
Hey there!
But once we fall off of the slope, we're able to double jump again. So what we do is we jump onto the slope, drift back slightly so that we can double jump again and jump back onto the slope. Repeat that and you can scale basically any cliff in this game. It's not always the fastest way to do it, but yeah. You may have seen me doing it earlier in the run as well. There are a couple less obvious examples where I'll jump twice without landing, or double jump twice without landing, and that's just because basically any corner of any geometry in this game you can do that off of. It's not a super prominent tech, but it is pretty useful in a couple segments. Now we've got some log puzzles. These are sort of sliding block puzzles, and this is one of the harder segments if you don't remap your controls, because usually the quick swap on aliens is on the D-pad, and you gotta move around and switch aliens quickly. I have my controls remapped so that the two aliens we need during this segment are in a more accessible place on the controller, but it wasn't always that way, and I've given myself much hand pain doing that. And now we're going to get up to some other, you know, I mentioned moving logs, but now we've got to cut down trees. And we're just the best at that. The lumberjacks are actually going to pop off for us every time we cut down a tree. So I'll show you that here. But what we can actually do is we can cancel the lumberjack celebration by transforming into another alien. And saves a little bit of time on this section, and you actually get to see the lumberjacks just floating in the air there. Usually they're in front of the camera, but by transforming, you can see their deep secret.
Hey Gwen, hey Matt, I got to and you're right.
So now we've got one more fetch quest with Dr. Amphibian before the end of this area. We're going to quickly collect 10 frogs, as one does. I'm not really sure what this potion is for, but we'll find out, I'm sure, after we've made it. So this segment's a little bit easier because we're only collecting frogs and we're not collecting multiple different things. We can just kind of go to anywhere that has an item and just mash the grab button. You'll see that I'm turning into Ben when I do that. That's because Ben doesn't have any attacks. Usually if you mash the attack button to try and grab the frogs, you'll get stuck in an animation, but if you transform into Ben, you have no risk of doing that. And that'll take us into our next licensed game moment, where we have to mix together some potions, but I've actually forgotten what the right potion is, so we're just gonna have to try them all and see what happens. So we'll start with, you know, a bit of blue, a bit of green. that it? No, okay, we got pumpkins. Try more green than blue. Okay, we got frogs. That's a bit embarrassing. Let's just mix them all together and see what happens. There we go. That's the right potion. No, it's always the third one. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which potion you mix. It's always the third one that's the correct option. So I didn't forget. And it turns out Amphibian was evil. Oh no, the witch doctor was evil and is actually helping Hex. Now we got another boss fight. It's wild how fast these things happen. It's actually one of my favorite parts about this game is that each segment is faster than the last. Obviously the city took us about 25 minutes. This area took us a little bit shorter, and the next one's only about 10 minutes long. And that's because of it's because of two major glitches that I'm really excited to show off. But for now, we'll do some combat. Forearms is actually a really good combat alien. You don't get to see him that much because of course we have Accelerate to do most of our combat duties. But Forearms has the highest default damage value. So in any percent where we don't have any damage upgrades, Forearms comes in really handy.
Bark is worse than your butt.
This boss is wood, so we can just burn him down using Heat Blast. And one thing you'll notice that I've been doing throughout the run is at the end of each attack, I'm transforming into a different alien. And the reason for that is just because it cancels our attack animation. During the combat segments, you're not able to transform into Ben. So if you try to, it actually transforms you back to the alien you were, but it also cancels your attack animation. Coming up next, we have Wrath Skip. Wrath Skip used to be the first glitch done in the run. Well, after All Aliens glitch. It used to be the first thing done in the run, but now we've moved it over to the sort of middle of the run. The way Wrath Skip works is just another lucky coincidence where it turns out there's a lever up in the mountain, and if you flip that lever, it starts a new quest, which is like halfway through the main quest for this area, which means we can just skip the first half. And what that means is we also skip unlocking Wrath. You might know Wrath if you're a Ben 10 fan. He's the Tony the Tiger looking guy, and unfortunately for us, Wrath will not be unlocked in this run. He is the only alien that it's possible to beat the game without. I mean, even if you could skip the other aliens, which you can't, you have to unlock them, but if you could, it wouldn't be very helpful because there are various points throughout the game where they're absolutely necessary. But we're very, very lucky that Wrath just so happens to be completely useless as long as you have some speedrunning tricks up your sleeve. So usually you would climb up these rock holding climbs using Wrath. He's a bit of a gymnast. He does parkour, but because we have Heat Blasts, double, triple, quadruple jump, we can just skip all of that stuff. Now we're going to go talk to Astrid, and she's going to tell us that our destiny is up in the mountains, and we're not quite sure what that means, but we should definitely go check it out. And this leads us into the next big glitch for the game. I mentioned it earlier, Forearms has a very useful glitch attached to him, and this has got a bit of controversy attached to it as well, because, well, this is all bosses single player, but we're about to do the cardinal sin of single player, and we're going to go into co-op mode. Now there's only one of me, but I'm going to be using my keyboard and mouse to control both characters here. So why was this controversial? Well, some people think that single player should be single player and that you shouldn't be allowed to use the second player. And some people think that without the second player, the run is really boring. So that's the huge controversy. It was an argument between like 3 people and it got resolved pretty quickly. But the way that this works is that we're going to void out with Ben, and if you do that while holding a rock, it gets stuck in your chest.
You didn't see that.
And if you pull a rock with the second player, it'll launch you up into the air. The first player.
Getting in my daily
Look at this. It's basically an infinite height glitch. It's pretty useful. So the current rules for any % single player, all bosses single player, is that you're only allowed to use co-op to do the rock launch. Strictly speaking, the exact rule is that you're not allowed to use the second player during combat, and the reason for that is because we want to discourage the run from becoming
Come in handy.
a proper one-player, two-controller game, but we also want that to be available because it saves like 20 minutes, so why wouldn't? It's a little bit of an awkward ruling, but I think pretty much every active member of the community has agreed on it, so... Now we're going to unlock Diamond Head. Diamond Head is a fan favorite, classic Ben 10 alien. And you know who else is a fan favorite? Sonic the Hedgehog. In this game, Diamond Head is voiced by Roger Craig Smith, and you should be able to hear it when he talks. Some of my favorite voice lines from Diamond Head in this game are "Uh-oh, baddies up ahead," and "I'm sliding on in." Diamond Head has the ability to create a shield of diamond that reflects projectiles. It's pretty useful because you can also jump off of it. And he has the ability to surf on diamonds in the air, which would be game breaking, but unfortunately we unlock him at the end of the game, so it's not that useful, but it comes in handy in a couple places. We're actually gonna skip a really easy fight segment just by surfing over it with that ability. So normally we would go to that island and we would fight some enemies, but as long as we don't land on the ground, we can just avoid that completely. Diamond Head kind of has to be at the end of the run by necessity, because we have to get Accelerate first. Obviously, Accelerate's so fast for movement in general that it would be a waste not to get him first. And then, because of that, the rest of the run kind of just falls into place. We need Accelerate, so we might as well do the rest of the city area. We need forearms to do the rock launch, so we have to do that first. I don't know why I went over here. That's the wrong way. So yeah, there's not a lot of room for routing here. The game kind of routed itself after the first couple glitch discoveries. So now we're doing something which is almost certainly illegal, and we're investigating Hex's hotel room. He has some devilish secrets. He has a map, and this map is going to tell us where to go next. But not before we fight the next boss. We actually have a pretty cool movement section coming up next. We're going to collect some totems off of various islands in Linguini Lake. And it's something that I used to do almost entirely with Diamond Head, because Diamond Head's surfing ability makes it so forgiving. But I routed it with Accelerate, because Accelerate's very, very fast, and it turns out that you can almost entirely do it with Accelerate. There's just some really tricky jumps. A lot of this is because of just weird geometry, where you feel like you should be able to run or jump there, but you're actually not able to, or maybe it's just because the jump's actually kind of hard. So, you know, the beginning of this segment starts off easy. You can just hold forward and jump whenever the opportunity is presented to you. But coming up here, we have a really tricky jump. It looks like you should be able to land on that ice no difficulty, but you can only land on the right side of it, and it's actually quite a small area. I died there, so I'm just gonna do this segment with Diamond Head. this is the one part where we do need to use Diamond Head because there's no way to cross that gap with just Accelerate. And then over here we're going to use Heat Blast because we don't have Wrath, so we have to get up there somehow. And now we have the second example of the rock launch. And this has gone through a couple of different iterations. We used to go about halfway up the mountain and then trigger the rock launch using a really roundabout way of getting out of bounds so that we could void Ben out. But then I discovered that if you're good at the game, you can just void out at Linguini Lake and avoid some invisible walls that will end your run if you're not careful. Thankfully, they're not that punishing in a marathon setting because you can restart immediately, but it's kind of that bad in a record run because you're at least losing like 15 seconds, and I don't know, this game's not that optimized, but I've definitely been doing work to get down. World record at the start of the year was 1 hour 17 minutes, and now we're down to 102.
Let me at him.
That is partly due to glitch discoveries, partly due to optimizations, and the other part is just due to me getting better at the game. So this is the second rock launch. It's going to take us right to the boss, and that's what I was talking about with the run-ending invisible ceilings. Sometimes you'll just be cut off halfway through your launch. What I'm going to do here, it's a little bit slower, but I'm just going to stand still while I do it, and I think we should be good now. I'm going to go extra high here. Usually I only go to like 350 meters, but we'll push it to maybe about there should be okay, 460. And that just gives me a little bit of extra confidence that I'll be able to make the jump. In one of my no reset runs, I failed that for about 4 minutes. Thankfully, I still came in under estimate, so like worst comes to worst, I'm pretty sure we're good. And now everybody say hello to Wrath. Like I said, we don't unlock Wrath, but the game just transforms us into Wrath here at the start of this boss fight. And blink and you'll miss him because say goodbye to Wrath. We don't actually have him unlocked, we just had him for a little bit. As soon as I transform into Diamond Head I lose him, and unfortunately it wouldn't be fast if I played the whole segment as him. Interesting thing about this boss, it's the only one that doesn't have a cutscene which plays every time you break a crystal. So even though it's slower, because it's the only boss we do with only one alien, which means we can't cancel our attacks or anything, it's a little bit faster because the cutscenes are gone.
Crystal clear, Rockface.
Yeah, Wrath really is a fan favorite. It's a shame he couldn't be around for longer. Maybe if I ever route 100%, we'll get to see more of him. So yeah, this segment, not super interesting. I'm just going to be spamming the same combo with Diamond Head over and over. But that ends the mountain section, and we're going on to the trials. The trials are a tricky section of the game where you only have access to 2 of your aliens at a time, and you have to do various challenges that are designed specifically for those aliens. Before we do that though, we gotta return to home base. Earlier I mentioned that we're gonna play the whole game out of bounds, right? Well, it's really handy that we are playing the whole game out of bounds of the tutorial area, because we got to get back to the tutorial area, and because we're out of bounds it's really easy to get back. We just need to get close enough to it that we get death warped back to it. So this is one of the examples where having to play around the death plane actually really comes in handy.
Hey, monsters nearby.
We're just going to run up this mountain and then we're at the tutorial area again. And I don't need to do it using Ben's scooter anymore. We've got Accelerate, which makes this jump almost impossible to fail. You'd have to do a really early jump to miss that one. Now we've got to pick up a spell book. This is about where the any % run would start, just to give you a sense of like how much shorter it is.
Should I give him a head start?
It skips all of that stuff that we just spent the last 50 minutes doing. And yeah, like I said, these flying enemies don't give us so much trouble when we have all this damage output. What you're going to see more and more commonly for the rest of the run is these elite enemies. They have gold health bars and a
Better luck next time.
slightly different color. You can think of them like shiny enemies if you're a fan of Pokemon, but basically they have a little bit more health. It doesn't really bother us. The spawn rate of them seems to be tied to our total upgrades, but it might also be tied to story progression. No one's ever checked because it's not that important. They really don't give us too much extra trouble anyway. Some of them are fixed. Like, there are some enemies that will always be elites, but those are mostly overworld enemies that we don't fight at all. So now we've got the trials coming up. There are 3 trials. We're going to start with Trial C. That's the Accelerate and Wrath trial. It's a bit of a problem. We don't have Wrath, and unlike the boss fight, this one won't start us off as Wrath. So how do we do it without Wrath? Well, it turns out that most of it's pretty easy. Because Accelerate's superior movement abilities, it doesn't give us too much trouble, but there is one jump that has been a run ender for a long time, and when I first started running this game, it took upwards of 6 minutes of banging my head against the wall to figure out. But it's just that. These little black diamonds on the spires, they act as slopes, and if you jump into them with the right angle, you get pushed up the towers. And I know I made that look easy, but trust me, give it a try if you ever play this game. It's quite difficult. It fell off there. It's
Back at the start.
very minor time loss. It's one of my favorite parts about this game is like when you're first getting into it, dying, you're maybe losing 5 or 10 seconds, falling off the level, maybe 5 seconds. It's really forgiving in all of these parts. That in a lot of other runs, dying can just end your run, but in this one, we're pretty chill. So as part of the story, I got a health upgrade. It was a temporary health upgrade, but we've got it. I'm going to use it now because in the next trial, Trial B, I've died before. And that's the one trial where dying is really bad because it sends you back to the beginning of the level. It's not supposed to, but because we skipped so much of the level, we never hit any of the checkpoints. So I like to use that health bar there just for a little bit of extra security. Really, we shouldn't be too worried about it, but the only combat aliens we have are Diamond Head and Heat Blast, which are pretty good at crowd control and pretty bad at dealing with flying enemies. One thing you saw there was I broke the crystal. There is a small period in between defeating the last enemy and the cutscene playing where if you destroy the crystal, the game will soft lock. Really, I should describe it as a hard lock because you won't be able to progress in the game after that point, even if you restart the game, because you'll be stuck in a state where you're not able to attack or interact with anything. And I discovered that on PB Pace, so yeah, something to be careful of. Really easy to avoid, but when you don't know that it's possible, sometimes stuff just happens. So like I said, Diamond Head can be game-breakingly good with his surfing ability. Look at all these islands that we're just gonna fly over and ignore. It's really a shame we get him so late in the run, but that's the way the cookie crumbled. So during this segment, it is fastest to just do it all with Diamond Head, because Diamond Head's surfing speed is faster than Heat Blast's running speed. But there are a couple jumps where it's cycle dependent whether Diamond Head can make it up, and in those cases I do use Heat Blast. And that's the end of this trial. We're just coming up on the combat segment here, and you'll see how useful Diamond Head's combos can be at crowd control. I mean, he can take out a bunch of enemies at once, but you'll also see how difficult it can be to deal with these big enemies. You have no way to move around while you're attacking, so that shield can be really irritating during this section. And sometimes, depending on the floating height of the flying enemy, your area of effect attack will also hit the flying enemies, but it's not very reliable, so it can be a little bit awkward. Now, this last trial has forearms and shock rock. And you might think not being movement-oriented aliens would make this segment quite slow, and you're only half right. It's relatively less flashy and stuff compared to the other trials, but it's not that long either. It's a relatively short trial that's mostly taken up by puzzles that we skip. So it ends up being pretty short in practice. There's a couple shock rock launches here, which can be tricky because of our low airspeed. Making this jump here with a shock rock launch really requires you to get a good amount of height. But other than that, I mean, that's the trial. I can talk a little bit about how the combat works. That comes up and is relevant here is you might not even notice while you're playing. I certainly didn't until I was a couple runs in, but when you're attacking an enemy, you actually lock onto it. It's kind of a hidden feature because there's no reticle or anything, but you lock onto enemies when you're attacking them, and that can be really awkward in this segment. As you see, there's little raised platforms, but the main arena is lower down, and if an enemy that's on the lower section happens to be the one that you lock onto, then you'll get stuck on the platform trying to attack something that's right next to you, but you'll be aiming in the complete wrong place, and I've lost time in good runs due to that, just because it can be a little bit awkward. There's no indication of what your alien's going to be aiming at or anything like that. And that's the end of the trials. But what were they all for? Well, after beating the trials, we get the Omni Guard. It's an upgrade for the Omnitrix that has no gameplay function. Pardon me. It's an upgrade for the Omnitrix that has no gameplay function, but just serves a story purpose. And we're going on to the final battle, so expect time in the next 5 minutes. This final battle is a lot like the rest of the bosses. You're going to destroy 3 crystals and then fight the final boss one-on-one. But Hex has a couple phases, and he has a much higher health than all of the other bosses. So while we can do massive damage using Accelerate, we're not able to one-shot him like we are the first boss. But it doesn't cause us too much trouble.
Alien.
And yeah, this is really the point in the run where the beat-em-up part of the game becomes more prevalent. We have just a bunch of fights back to back to back.
Physical world.
There are a couple interesting things about these fights in particular. So, while Hex is hiding up in the big bubble created by the crystals... Oh, we're going to use a damage upgrade. While he's hiding up there, he's also going to throw fireballs at us, and the more crystals we destroy, the more violent these fireballs become. And these are another example of a little bit of RNG. it's not RNG if he shoots the fireballs, he's always going to shoot the fireballs. But how fast he shoots them and when he shoots them is slightly randomized. It's a bit of a timing mix-up. I just died there, which means I'm going to have to start that crystal again. And I fell off the edge.
Again!
Not a big deal. Like I said, dying doesn't put us too far back. The game's relatively forgiving with that. But what I was going to say about dying is that this is the part in the run where it's going to happen. These fireballs can... sometimes he just has godly aim, and he's going to hit you 100 out of 100 times, and he just decides that you die sometimes. That's not what happened there. What happened there was I just played bad, but... yeah. Now these crystals we can also destroy before the cutscene comes up, but in this case it won't soft lock us, which is nice. During this segment we have a lot of flying enemies. We're just gonna abuse the fact that there's stairs here and hit them from the top of the stairs, as much as possible at least. And you can really see the power of Accelerate's combo there, where he moves around while he attacks. It's great for crowd control. Now, these big enemies can be a little bit awkward. You want to lock onto them so that you can grapple on top, but at the same time, there's a lot of flying enemies that Shockrock loves to grapple onto as well. So it can be awkward to actually aim for the right place, but it's not a bad thing if he picks the wrong enemy to grapple onto. At the end of the day, we've got to kill all of them anyway. But as you can see here, he's being very aggressive with these fireballs. Luckily, hiding inside the enemy's head actually gives us a bit of cover from them, but it can be quite treacherous. And here we go, we fight Hex one-on-one. And we try to do as much damage as possible using our running ability.
Oh, this'll catch up with you. Hey, monsters nearby.
He uses the power of all the elements. The only one that's super dangerous to us is this laser here, which is his fire ability. It can pin you in a corner and just delete your health really quickly.
Bend to my will, physical world.
And now we've got our last chase segment. I never really thought of this as a chase segment until earlier in the run where I said we don't do any of them vanilla. Technically we do this chase segment vanilla. We're just going to run up these stairs, and we are going to beat Hex to it, because normally you're supposed to dodge these fireballs, but there's a spot on the right side here where you can just hold forward and you're safe. And we're coming up on time really soon here. This is our last confrontation with Hex.
It's hero time.
And that's time.
Tennyson! This is not the end. I will become the most powerful
end of the
magician
final boss.
this world has ever seen. And if not, at least I'll be ruining your vacations.
How did I do?
Actually, I saw all of
Pretty darn good, I'd say. There were a couple donations that came in there. I didn't want to interrupt your momentum, but there was one from Bigger Lily Fan
Well, hey.
saying I'm a scooter commuter, and there was one from, I'm sorry if I say it wrong, but Angie? I'm not super sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was gotta use Accelerate to break the game. Let's go, Lily. So I just wanted to make sure you heard those because they were both directed towards you.
Alright, thank you so much to everyone who donated during the run. Shout out to the Ben 10 community. They're all really cool. Shout out to Woven, who discovered like 90% of the glitches in this run. I'm really just like the one who plays it. And yeah, that's me. That's the game.
All right, cool stuff. Don't go anywhere, guys. We've got more coming up soon. All right, everyone. That was a pretty cool Ben 10 run, if I do say so myself. I know we were pretty surprised when it was submitted, but super cool to see it. I'm actually joined here by a fellow host who will be taking over for me shortly. It's just Emily P. If you want to
Hi,
go.
Kit. I've actually seen that before, the Ben 10 one.
Really?
And unironically, my son plays it a lot. A lot.
It actually looks decently fun, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, if you like the lore too for the game, like that's where to go. That's where it's at, he tells me. So there's that.